Hi everyone, so this will be part 2 of the algebraic expansion video. So I'm going to carry on with slightly more advanced examples, so please follow along. I'm going to start off with, we're going to expand a term that has 3 terms inside, so a bracket that has 3 terms inside, multiplied by a negative 3. So how do we go about doing this? So in the other video, we're multiplying 2, so like there were 2 terms in the bracket multiplied by something outside, so now there's 3 terms. So even if there are 3 terms, we still don't have to not get confused. We can actually just apply the very similar concept to what we did earlier, whereby the negative 3 is going to multiply by negative x, multiply by 7, multiply by y. One thing to take note is that this is same and is true whether we put the negative 3 to the right of the bracket, as you can see here, or if we had put it to the left of the bracket. We would still have to multiply by all the terms. So in this case, we're multiplying all 3. We start off now with negative x multiplied by negative 3. So we're going to have 3x, because the negative signs will cancel out when we multiply them together. Now, negative 3 times 7 gives us negative 21, and negative 3 times y gives us negative 3y. Hence, this would be the final answer. One thing to take note is that, as I said earlier, even if the negative 3 was here, or here, we would have gotten the same answer. So please take note on that and don't get confused. Okay, so moving on, we have another example whereby negative, and we're in the bracket, and inside we'll have 3 terms. So in this case here, it's even more complicated. We have a negative outside by itself, and then a bracket with 3 terms inside, and then another bracket with negative 3. So in this case, we have to always recall bottomless. So there's a bracket here and a bracket here, so we look for inside the brackets. Can we simplify what's inside this bracket? We can't. So fine, we take note of that. And can we simplify what's inside here? We can't. Okay, so we can't simplify any further. Now we just have to go about expanding. So when it comes to expanding, do we multiply this negative sign inside first, or this negative 3 with this? The answer is, we're going to do this negative 3 multiplied by this, this and this, because brackets will multiply by brackets first. So what we should say is, then we're going to say this equals to negative, and we put a bracket here. We don't remove the bracket yet, because bracket times bracket will still give us a bracket, because this negative sign will apply then to everything that we have inside this big bracket. So negative 3 times x gives us negative 3x. Negative 3 times 13y gives us negative 39y. Negative 3 times minus 7z gives us positive 21z. Okay, so now our last step would be, we realize that what's inside the brackets can't be simplified any further, so we have to just incorporate this last negative sign. So a negative sign by itself would be effectively like multiplying by a negative 1. So what happens, you can just say this equals to, so like a negative 1 multiplied by negative 3x will just give us 3x. This will give us plus 39y. This will give us minus 21z. Hence, this is our final answer. Okay, now let's move on to another example. Let's say we did something like this. I think this is slightly easier, but I also want to touch on it. let's say we had x plus 2y minus 3x. Okay. So in this case, we can't simplify these two any further. Then we just have to incorporate the plus sign into this 2 to remove the brackets. So plus 2y times a positive 1. So actually a plus by itself is effectively multiplying by a positive 1. So 2y times a positive 1 will just give us plus 2y. And here, negative 3x multiplied by a positive 1 will just give us negative 3x. So we've removed the brackets easily as such. And now, again we realize that, wait, there is an x here and there is x here. So we can actually simplify further. So, negative 3x and an x, what happens? We're going to get negative 2x. Because x minus, this is a 1, right? Effectively this is like a 1x. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So negative 2x plus 2y. And now, we look here. We can't simplify any further. And finally, yes, this will be our final answer. Let's move on. A similar example, but this time with a negative sign in front. Let's say we now had 2y minus a bracket, and inside the bracket we have a 4x plus 5y. So now we have to multiply this negative with this term and this term. So we're going to have it as 2y, negative 1 times 4x will give us negative 4x, negative 1 times 5y will give us negative 5y. And then here we realize that this and this can be simplified further. So this will give us negative 4x and negative 3y. So this will be our final answer. Next, I'm going to have a tough example whereby there's a bracket within a bracket. Now, how do we do this? This is going to be very tricky, right? So, especially for this question, I would say, because when there's a bracket within a bracket, I've noticed a lot of my students make mistakes. So, please pay extra attention. Okay, see, so now we have a bracket here which is within another bracket here. So maybe you want to pause and think how you would do it and write down your answer and see whether your answer is the same as what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so we start off with, for this one, we really have to recall the Bodmer's rule and see that if there's brackets within brackets, we work first at the innermost bracket. So the innermost bracket will be this. And then we realize that, actually, this is fine. We can't simplify this any further because 5y minus 4x can't be simplified. So now, if this can't be simplified any further, we just have to remove this bracket by multiplying with this negative 1 here. So what is going to happen is that we keep everything outside the bracket the same first, and now we just look to remove these brackets. So this will give us 3x, negative 1 times 5y. So negative 5y. And negative 1 times negative 4x, giving us positive 4x. And then, now we look, inside the brackets, we can simplify it, right? Because 4x and x, they are the same term and the same power, so we can actually just add them together. So we're going to simplify it as such. And now, inside the bracket, we can't simplify any further. We're going to now remove the bracket. And remove the bracket by multiplying by negative 1 again. So this will give us 2x minus 7x, because negative 1 times 7x. And then negative 1 times negative 5y plus 5y. And now, finally, this part here can be simplified further, and I'll write the answer here as I'm running out of space. So 2x minus negative 7x will give us negative 5x plus 5y. So this is the final answer. As you can see, we've gone from a bracket within a bracket and 4 terms all the way to expanded it out and then simplified it and gotten this final answer, which is much easier to interpret. Okay. So next, I'm going to move on to my final example, whereby there are 2 terms. I mean, not 2 terms, okay, let me just show you. So actually, see, this is one normal question, right? Like we do earlier in the example. There were examples something like this, but now it's like we could have 2 questions in one. So, in a way, right? You see, because our earlier example was something like this, or something like this, and now we're gonna have just 2 of them at the same time, right? So now this looks very tricky. So how do you approach this question? So what happens is that we need to really have a very thorough understanding of our hypotenuse and apply it. So to apply it, we have to see that the brackets are here and we can't simplify what's inside the bracket, so therefore we have to go from left to right. Since all the brackets can't be simplified any further, we just go left to right. So now we work on these 2 brackets first, because these are the left 2 brackets. So negative 2 times 3x gives us negative 6x. Negative 2 times negative y gives us positive 2y. And then minus. Okay, here this one is quite tricky, because unlike this earlier one, there's a negative sign here. So what I would propose is that we keep the brackets up first, we don't remove them, because here we can just multiply straight away and remove the brackets because there's nothing in front to consider. But here we have a negative sign to consider. So I'm going to keep the brackets up and just multiply this with these 2 terms. So minus 3 with x and 4y. So minus 3 multiplied by x will give us minus 3x. And minus 3 times negative 4y will give us positive 12y. See, why is it important to keep the brackets up? It's because now we can do one more step. And the next step will be us incorporating this negative. So this negative will be like multiplying with a negative 1. So minus 6x plus 2y, and then we have a minus 1 times minus 3x giving us a positive 3x, and a minus 1 times a 12y giving us a minus 12y. So therefore, we've removed all the brackets and now we just have to simplify this last 4 terms. We see there's x, x and a y, y. So therefore we can simplify as such. Negative 6x plus 3x will give us negative 3x, and 2y minus 12y gives us minus 10y. And that will be our final answer, because we have simplified as much as we can go. So I hope that you understand and follow along well. And if you did not, you can always repeat the video and try to follow along again. So I hope that you learned something from the video, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.